Welcome back to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a really profound and honestly kind of uncomfortable psychological pattern. You know the one. Have you ever just looked around at your inner circle and suddenly realized, wait a minute, everyone here is in constant crisis? Well, today we're going to break down exactly why that happens. And more importantly, what that pattern actually says about you.
Okay, let's start by holding up a mirror. Take a really close look at your past relationships, your absolute closest friends. You know, the people who are always texting you late at night needing something. Do you see a pattern there? A lifelong tendency to attract folks who are just struggling? People who always seem to be one tiny step away from a total meltdown, or who just literally cannot seem to keep their lives together? It's almost like you're a human magnet for suffering.
Now, I bet for your entire life, you've probably labeled this as a huge virtue. You probably think of yourself as this highly empathetic, super sensitive person, right? Thinking, oh, I just have a huge heart, and broken people are just naturally drawn to my light. But the psychological reality, it's vastly different. This isn't just some quirky, sweet personality trait. It is a profound psychological trap, and it's built entirely on your deep-seated need to be needed.
So I want to ask you a question, and I really need you to be brutally honest with yourself here. Think about a time when someone you were actively saving finally got their act together. They actually became self-sufficient. Did you feel this sense of genuine, uncomplicated joy for them? Or, if you dig really deep down, did you feel this quiet, panicky sense of emptiness? Did you subconsciously start pulling away from them? Because if their healing made you feel obsolete, yeah, we need to talk about the psychological war you're fighting. That brings us to section 1. The wounded healer, which is Carl Jung's diagnosis of the constant fixer.
Jung actually identified these individuals, and hey, maybe this sounds exactly like you, as people whose entire identity is rooted in holding everything together for everyone else. A wounded healer is someone who is magnetically drawn to suffering. They actually feel the most alive, the most vibrant when someone in crisis absolutely needs them. In fact, they organize their entire sense of purpose around the act of helping others. It literally becomes their lifeblood.
And here is the absolute crucial point. You aren't just getting unlucky in love. You aren't just heavily burdened by this massive capacity for empathy. The brutal truth is that you are actively, even if it's completely unconsciously, recruiting chaos right into your life. You're basically broadcasting a signal that says, hey, bring me your brokenness because, well, you need it to function. Which leads us into part 2, the illusion of compassion, and that deep fear of emptiness hiding right behind your urge to fix everyone. Look, society absolutely praises you for these endless sacrifices, right? People call you selfless, they say you're an absolute saint, but Jung, he would look right at this dynamic and tell you straight up that what you're practicing isn't true compassion. It's actually codependency, just wearing compassion's clothing. True compassion operates from a place of wholeness, but what the wounded healer is doing, that operates at a really low psychological frequency because it's rooted entirely in a sense of lack.
And this just brilliantly highlights the dark side of this whole pattern. Subconsciously, you actually need their chaos to validate your own existence. If they start getting better, you might subtly start inventing new reasons why they still need you, or you just pull away completely. The core subconscious belief driving the bus here is that you just aren't enough unless you're needed, and your life simply has no meaning unless you're actively fixing a problem. Literally, if they become okay, you lose your fundamental sense of self. Just think about the absolute irony of modern wellness culture for a second. We get online, we wear our emotional exhaustion like this giant badge of honor, bragging about how we just care too much. But let's be clinically brutal here. You are not an angelic martyr. You're treating someone else's disaster as a massive distraction. You are literally using their trauma to avoid meeting yourself. The really harsh reality of this pattern is that your constant, relentless need to fix others is just a subconscious strategy. It's an avoidance tactic. As long as you are constantly running around putting out everyone else's fires, you never actually have to stop, turn around, and sit with the unresolved pain, the anxiety, and the emptiness in your own life. You are, quite literally, running from your own burning house. So the big question then becomes, how do we actually elevate our consciousness and break this utterly exhausting cycle? That brings us to section 3, care without control. Jung observed that genuinely evolved people operate very differently. First off, they can completely surrender that fixer identity. Second, they only offer support when it is explicitly asked for and when it's actually appropriate. And third, and man, this is the hardest one, they can step back and actually let people struggle. Why? Because they fundamentally trust that the struggle has a necessary purpose in that person's journey. They realize they don't have to rescue everyone. Now, I know a lot of people worry that giving up this fixing behavior is going to make them a bad friend, but releasing this pattern doesn't make you cold or uncaring. It makes you discerning. It means you're transitioning away from being driven by an unaddressed wound on this compulsive autopilot, and you're finally stepping into a space where you are helping from a place of genuine fullness. Your generosity finally has deep roots, instead of just being a desperate, frantic need for validation. But I have to warn you, giving this up, it hurts. It is genuinely painful. Because think about it. If you are no longer the person everyone immediately leans on in a crisis, if your phone suddenly stops ringing at 2 a.m. with someone else's drama, you're suddenly forced to answer the most terrifying question of all. Who are you actually without that role? What is your value when you aren't being actively useful to someone else's dysfunction? So I want to leave you with a little exercise. Consider this the ultimate test of your psychological integration. The next time someone in your life brings you their chaos, their drama, or their absolute latest crisis, I challenge you to just do this. Listen, validate their feelings, look them right in the eye, and simply say, "Wow, that sounds really hard." And then, do not produce a single solution. Do not offer to make a call. Do not offer to fix it. Just hold the space. Notice how incredibly uncomfortable it feels to just sit there without managing their problem. It is time to stop turning your life into a rehabilitation center for people who aren't ready to heal themselves. You've got to let that helper identity die. Endure the discomfort of your own company, because when you can finally do that, you step into the fierce, untouchable power of carrying your own weight. You realize your worth was never, ever dependent on fixing the brokenness of the world. So ask yourself today, what would happen if you finally just let them carry theirs?